So we want to talk about building a practice using high net worth clients. And we've got Michael Karagianis from JANA, he's a senior consultant there. Going to introduce Vince O'Neill from Stanford Brown. We're going to have a bit of a lounge discussion on just where the value is, defining the size of the market, articulating what those clients are and how perhaps to get the best benefit from it. So gentlemen, welcome to the stage.
Well, thank you very much for coming along today. This is an opportunity to have a bit of a fireside chat with Vincent O'Neill, who's Head of Private Wealth at Stanford Brown. JANA Investment Advisors, a consultant to Stanford Brown, and they run a managed account program. But we thought it'd be interesting to have a chat about the high net worth side of their business. To preface it, I wanted to just show some information about the high net worth and family office market in Australia, because really it is quite enormous and probably underestimated in terms of the size it represents. The pool of assets that you see in the high net worth family office space, this is according to Rainmaker information, represents the largest pool of assets outside of industry and superannuation funds. Retail superannuation funds, about 1.4 trillion, over 250,000 clients that fit into that category. One of the attractions of it, the opportunity perhaps, is the higher advice revenue potentially that it presents relative to your average retail client, so the ability to lift that revenue per client equation. And one of the interesting points about this is that a lot of these clients are actually non-advised. So while there's a lot of advisors trolling over this market, particularly in the private wealth space, a lot of clients here are actually non-advised, which perhaps represents an opportunity, perhaps also a challenge. However, there are some considerations. They do have particular needs. They're not institutional clients, they're not retail clients. There's often multiple structures that you're dealing with in terms of the provision of advice. SMSFs, a very common feature. Family trust, corporate entities, PAFs, private ancillary funds can often be part of the landscape in advising a single client. Much more intensive servicing normally required, and the requirement potentially to consolidate reporting. Often, clients in this space have direct assets that they want to try and consolidate the reporting of with the listed assets. And they're looking for an advisor that can actually bring it all together for them. May have similar compliance requirements, and I'll certainly dwell on this point with Vincent, because one of the attractions that a lot of advisors point to in dealing with wholesale clients is, well, it's a compliant light environment compared to dealing with a retail client. That's not necessarily the case, and particularly when you're advising in regard to superannuation, SMSFs, it may be that you are actually having to treat them as a retail client anyway. They want access to investment solutions that are not available to retail clients. So this is perhaps, they've got less of a more of an illiquidity budget that they can work with. And so looking for products, deal flow in that space that is not available to your normal retail client is certainly part of the potential value add that they're looking for. There is certainly a role for managed accounts in this space, and I'll certainly talk about with Vince how Stanford Brown deal with it. But it's often a case we see that clients in this space, they get offered a managed account or an SMA or an MDA as a core offering, and then satellites are built around that to really provide that additional spice, if you like, that the high net worth client is looking for. And our perspective is that this is a market where consultants like JANA that are very experienced in the high net worth, ultra high net worth family office space can actually work with advisors on their investment proposition, on their deal flow opportunity to help build their proposition and their offer to the high net worth market. And that's really what we aim to do. We don't offer services to the entire advisor market. We've got a book of advisors that we work with. One common theme is often that they are actually looking to deal into the high net worth market, or they are very active in the high net worth market, and they're looking to leverage some of the capabilities and research that JANA can offer in this space. So things like being able to provide more tailored reporting. Often, they're looking at ESG investing. They actually want proof points. They want to see that their investments are actually hitting a sustainable objective that they have, you've got to be able to provide that reporting to them. Being able to offer that off-balance sheet reporting, so looking at illiquid assets, getting access to the deal flow, but actually being able to incorporate that reporting that you provide to those types of clients. So with that in mind, the opportunity here today is really to sit down with Vincent and really ask how Stanford Brown go about this and what lessons might be available for other advisors perhaps wanting to go into the same space. So Vincent, just in terms of Stanford Brown's approach and your book of business effectively, wholesale clients, high net worth clients, how significant is that as part of your overall client base?
Yeah, well, obviously there's two different categories there, and probably the best thing to set out in terms of how Stanford Brown approaches the space is that we're not one of those firms that does a lot of wholesale-only business. So we would probably have upwards of 70% of our clients would qualify to be wholesale-only clients, but we essentially, by and large, treat almost all our clients as retail clients or hybrid in terms of some of the investments and things of that nature. So we're very much, as a business, focused on holistic advice, and that stems across, obviously, investments, but also various strategy work, and also some of the family elements that we'll probably talk to a little bit today, which means that you're inevitably going to be crossing over between things that could be wholesale and things that need to be retail advice.
So when you talk about hybrid type arrangements, that in essence suggests that you're treating a single client potentially in one context as retail, in another context as wholesale.
You should probably consider from our perspective, there'd be a narrow scope of clients that might be completely wholesale where the mandate is specifically a money management type piece. So that could be for a philanthropic organization or a larger institution that's given us a pot of money to manage for some perpetual purpose. But that's probably rare. The vast majority of clients will be signed typically on a retail engagement, and then we might have an individual wholesale engagement on a specific investment opportunity or for a purpose similar to that.
And in terms of the way you approach those clients, are you deliberately targeting clients in a certain AUM band or funds under advice band, or is it just the way it's worked out, coming to you as a known name in that space?
Yeah, look, I think a bit of both, and I know there's probably plenty of advisors in the room, and I've worked with Stanford Brown for 15 years last month, and I can certainly had 15 years of working sort of in our private wealth division and seeing the evolution of the clients that we might be working with, the clients that we're targeting, and where probably our advice resonated best with them. Like, it's no news to anyone that obviously the compliance burden and the amount of work that needs to be done to support any retail arrangement has dramatically increased over the last 10 years. And that has naturally driven up, we're a retainer-based fee business, so our clients pay a monthly retainer reviewed annually. And it has naturally driven up the minimum level of what that retainer should be. Therefore, we would openly say to clients, there isn't a minimum asset level that you would need to work with us. But from our perspective, there is probably a minimum level of income or complexity that you require to justify the fee. And the second element to that is what we found when we go back and survey our clients and seek the feedback. And you'd have your traditional categories. Every firm does it a little bit different, but client A, category B, category C, or platinum, gold, whatever mechanism a firm uses. We actually found that there was a correlation between our highest fee-paying clients and those that showed the highest level of satisfaction with what we were doing, and that was because I guess that was fortunate we were doing one thing right, which was we were giving a higher level of service to those higher fee-paying clients, as you should, and that they valued it. And that probably saw us then focus more towards that segment where we knew, well, this is, one, economically can work, and two, if we're providing a service there that the clients most value, let's concentrate where our work is valued the most.
And that sort of tiering of service where you're really offering a platinum service, how do you go about that? What is that? How's that constituted?
Look, there's a series of things that you might consider, but one of the first things is probably more of a team-based approach to those clients. So we would want, if you had clients that are, potentially you're looking after 5 or 10 plus certainly, you'd want to probably have a minimum team of 3 servicing those. So you'd often have like a lead advisor. I call a secondary advisor an associate, but it's not really. It's actually another advisor. It's probably just a less experienced advisor that also is across their situation. And then they have got a dedicated point of call within a client service support team. And it is probably client service support person often ends up having most interaction with them, because we'll find that one of their largest interaction points with it is often just moving things around. Money needs to be transferred, things need to be paid. So at that level, we're very happy to be very hands-on and help make it easy for them. In doing it, obviously, you've got to have various protocols in place to protect yourselves as a business, but that team approach is probably one of the core things, as well as then we'd have a meeting structure around formal meetings, formal reporting. That might be more regular. And it's also going to be more tailored to what they want. So a big call out, I would say, particularly when you get that larger client space, is your standard offering needs to be more adaptable to what they want. So we definitely would have some clients at that sphere that would love and demand the really incredibly detailed reporting across their balance sheet, across cash flows, across their entities on a regular basis. And some others that just would turn the page and say, yes, that's nice, but once a year is plenty for that level of detail. That's not for me. So we want to be able to adapt. Obviously, that's the skill probably of the lead advisor, the person that owns the relationship, to know what's important to this client and how do I make sure we're delivering on that.
What are the pitfalls in terms of, or the considerations that advisors who might be contemplating targeting the high net worth market really have to bear in mind if they're going to go down that path?
For us, one of the big items is just building the infrastructure behind the advisors to help deliver. And that's a respect for all advisors, that's an increasing challenge. So that infrastructure might need to deliver from a compliance perspective. So that's around the various documents that you're needing to provide the clients with. From a reporting perspective, so that's what is your offering, how are you reporting back to them, not just on the investments that you manage and their performance of that, but across their broader world, and have you got the infrastructure to do that efficiently? And then that proactive client services side of things, again, that you've got the resources, you've got the people with the right skill set to communicate at the appropriate way to those clients, to be proactive in understanding what they're doing. And really, in an ideal world, you are helping to tell the client, this has come up, this is what we need to do, you just need to approve this, and off we go. That probably sounds obvious, but I guess I speak for us. We're probably a firm of about 15 advisors. We have a staff of about 50, largely based in North Sydney, and there's just a huge apparatus that sits behind the advisors. And plus, on top of that, I should say about 15 offshore staff that help deliver a lot of that document production back into our team in-house to then have it vetted before it goes to the clients. There's a lot of work goes into trying to make that smooth for the advisors such that they can focus as much of their time out towards the client and not having to just project manage all that's required just to deliver the service.
And technology is an important part of that?
Yeah, 100%. So look, it's ever evolving. But around, we worked very hard probably 4 or 5 years ago around that reporting piece. We're trying to build really robust reporting back to the clients, and then to look at what software we could use to make that as systemized as possible. Anything that we can automate in that sort of repetitive part of the process, we will do it wherever we can. We've also introduced other elements like the portal that allows clients obviously digitally sign, digitally share documents, things of that nature. Again, all clients are different. Some clients love that and some clients prefer it a bit more traditional, but certainly that's the way the wind is blowing, and you ever need to be upping your game on that front. I think the other thing I would comment to say that we notice has evolved in the last couple of years post-COVID as well. So there was we had the luck of refitting out our office completed about 2 weeks before COVID hit in sort of March 2020. And that refit out obviously had a whole bunch of lovely meeting rooms redone and set up looking onto the harbour. And we've never needed all those meeting rooms since that time's occurred. We use them, but definitely clients have evolved into more of a hybrid relationship. So particularly with the high net worthers, where you might have had, let's say the formal review twice a year or quarterly or whatever it might have been, they want probably more regular, shorter catch-ups. It might be digitally at other things, and then you're doing the more significant items in person. So it's probably evolved into almost a continuous flow of a relationship. There is always something happening. There's always something, the next thing you're planning for, particularly when you get out to that more complex structure of they will have their super fund, their trust, the bucket company, and they might have a couple of other corporate entities for various reasons. There's always money being moved around. We have a small accounting offering in-house, but we also work very much hand in hand with the clients, other professional partners, be they accountants or lawyers, to try and make sure that we're planning for this time of the year, particularly this fortnight of the year, we're moving a lot of money around between entities to try and make sure everything is where it needs to be come 30 June to keep their accountants happy and keep the tax bill down. So.
One thing we were talking about just before we came up was, I guess, family offices and the intergenerational transfer issue. And I think one of the previous presentations showed that 90% of clients are lost through that transfer to an advisor. How do you deal with that? Because obviously, if you're running a significant high net worth focused business, that is a potential future key business risk.
Yeah, 100%. And I guess one of the key risks, obviously, as an advisor, is your primary relationship is obviously with the original family, if you want, or the original founders of the family wealth. And as the next generation comes through, if you don't have a relationship with them, they might have a relationship elsewhere, or they might just want to do their own thing. They might have views around how that should be invested, and they might want to even DIY it themselves. Look, there's probably our approach to the broader intergenerational wealth sphere is a spectrum. We're actually running an event tonight. We've run 2 events actually, one last month and one tonight, that are probably good examples of what we try to do and are continuing to try to do in the space. The event we ran last month was really targeted around our clients' children, so it was around a core financial education type approach. It obviously, it was really targeted, probably let's call it sort of 18 to 30, but it was spread a little bit outside of that. And around the fundamentals, obviously, of superannuation, things to think about and know about, elements of insurance, things to think about, inevitably property, mortgages, and broader financial education. So that's one approach we do. We then extend that out further to potentially do that one-on-one with our clients' children. A step beyond that is we certainly would have some of our clients where under their family trust they might have set up some sub-funds, sub-accounts for their children where there's a small amount invested, or it's a material amount, but it might be 20, 30, 40, 50,000. And for the children to have input on that, just so they get to experience the ebbs and flows of what's involved in investing in the market. And then the event we have tonight is much more targeted at the parents, and it's around just that broader, passing on money, when's it right? And this is particularly with the high net worth clients, this is a rapidly increasing conversation that we're having. So if I even think back to 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, the common answer from a lot of clients when we talk about, what's your views around your money values, transferring on money, it was often, well, look, we worked hard to build our wealth. That helped make us who we are. We would like them to probably have a similar experience. We might help them a little bit, but not so much to disincentivize them, or worst case scenario, to ruin them. That's changed significantly in the last 5 years. Our conversation is typically, we're really worried about how our children are going to stay in the Sydney property market. And if we don't help them do it, they're not going to be here, and that means the grandkids aren't going to be here, and well, it doesn't matter what our retirement looks like, that's a bad outcome. So that has really driven a lot of this to a head more, and therefore there's a lot of times where we're then trying to get involved, when some of that intergenerational wealth transfer happens, getting involved with the children as part of the process. Sometimes it is to help them get on the property market. Sometimes it's just to pay out a big chunk of the debt, and then trying to meet and advise the children around, well, if this helps you financially in this regard, how do you make the most of it in your broader planning? That doesn't mean that they're all necessarily ongoing retainer fee paid clients by us. We might just do a specific piece of work for them and just try and have them in our universe.
Now, we're going to have plenty of time for questions that you can pose to Vincent, so please get your thought processes going. But before we do go to questions, you're running a significant managed account program. So I'm interested just to delve into the background of that and how you basically interface that with your high net worth target audience. It's an SMA program that you've chosen to go down. So maybe just a bit of a background to the thinking. And
we have a managed account, essentially. It operates on Net Wealth, BT Panorama, and Macquarie Wrap. And our views with regard to managed accounts was, what was the primary driver? We set it up back in 2017, I think very late 2017, early 2018. And it was around trying to just trying to eliminate some of the inefficiencies of the traditional model in terms of house view, changes getting made at meeting time rather than time of opinion, and that clients would get massively disparate outcomes because of that. And also, obviously, potentially could create efficiencies around how you trade, and also around some of the compliance that sits around it. Now, our view also, right from the outset, was a managed account is definitely not right for all clients, and for any client, it's not right for their entire universe. So we would not unusually, probably ascribe to a core and satellite type approach for when it's used. So, your managed account is typically going to be your more liquid portfolio. For us, the way that we do it is across sort of risk profile-based managed accounts, and the level of risk is depending on their own circumstances. And then we complement that with assets that sit around it that might be either specific to that client, it might be legacy assets that they have, they may be assets that we bought for them at one time that we still like, but it's not open to new investment, or it might be just more speculative opportunities that come along. So that will include unlisted property, elements of private equity, probably two of the main buckets within there.
And these are where you basically provide a bit more tailoring, a bit more of the idiosyncratic portfolio outcome that you were talking about for high net worth clients, really engaging, understanding what their appetite is for that illiquidity, what sort of strategies they might already have. I imagine a number of very high net worth clients have got, for example, significant property holdings,
yes,
including
100%.
commercial property. So how to build complementary assets around
Yeah,
that.
and then I guess it's going to absolutely be tailored. Like any advice is tailored to the individual circumstances, but because of the complexity in the assets in their world, it's probably going to be maybe more off mainstream than other clients. And you're right in the comment that you made before. Definitely, they will expect us to be introducing them to some opportunities that they otherwise couldn't automatically run into themselves.
Fair enough. Well, in the interest of time, we might throw it open to questions from the floor. Who would like to ask Vincent something about high net worth clients? Yes.
Out of interest, what's the relationship like with the platform when you're running a managed account and you want to add an investment? So you've got a high net worth client and you think this is a brilliant investment, I want all my clients to get this investment, but they're all on a managed account. Is it easy to work with the platform to get an investment added so that it falls within your managed account on the various platforms?
So I guess the question is really, if you find a new investment and you want to add it into your managed account, is that straightforward or is that difficult? Yeah, it probably depends on the asset, really. So, and then to a degree depends on the platform. So it's probably not, it's slightly harder than you would be just trying to get an asset onto the platform anyway. So if you're an advisor, you've probably got experiences, there's an asset I want to have added onto the platform. The platform has to go through their degree of due diligence of whether assessing it's suitable. As you can imagine, adding it to the managed account probably just adds a slightly additional layer to that. But it's probably just part of the broader running a managed account process anyway. So if you're identifying new assets out there and you're just doing deep due diligence on using a manager, then you're usually going to find that by the time you're bringing it to the platform, given how established they are as a manager and the due diligence you've already done, that it's not going to be the type of asset that the platform's uncomfortable with. That's a bit different to it might be a more idiosyncratic asset that's suitable for a client and you're happy to have one client in, but not for everyone because it's probably going to be a little bit more curly and the platform might be a bit more cautious around it. And my experience for that is super retail type stuff. They're much more reluctant to put it onto the platform than they would be for just the standard wrap.
Yeah, getting something on a platform for a private menu, and it does vary from platform to platform. Some platforms are very simple and straightforward, others are more complex, but getting onto a private menu, which might be limited to wholesale clients for a specific advisor or a consultant that's working with an advisor, is much simpler than trying to get onto a public menu. The level of due diligence is often a lot less. The cost to the fund manager of getting it listed is a lot less. So it's much easier to have that sort of conversation. But it really does vary considerably platform by platform.
Vincent, I'm interested in the reporting element, which you touched on earlier, given these clients often have very dispersed assets. Did you insource that? Did you outsource that? How did you go about that process efficiently?
Yeah, it's in-house. It's in-house driven. So, and in a lot of circumstances we try to just make the most of, we use Xplan, we try to make the most of what Xplan can deliver on that, or sometimes using a complement of Xplan and what the platform can drive to us. But at some of the more curly end of it, we're unfortunately doing it bespoke on an Excel at times, and that's certainly not the scalable perfect solution that we'd like to get to. So I guess that's probably an ongoing journey in terms of trying to find new softwares, and particularly ways that you can do that in a more interactive way with a client and share it with them. I look at a lot of softwares in that space, but yet to probably see anything that absolutely nails it.
Vincent, I've got a question which sort of grows out of the immediately prior to lunch session on ESG and the extent to which, A, your clients are now raising that issue, and B, the way in which you're sort of trying to be ahead of the curve, in your own kind of addressing of ESG issues.
Yeah, there's probably two levels to it. So one is, I guess, at an investment committee level, how much you make that a consideration into your manager selection and things of that nature. And that's probably just a common mainstream part of probably a lot of people's approach now. You certainly can't be ignorant to that. I think what you will find at the high net worth end is people tend to have stronger views. And once we get into this space, one of the ways we approach it is honestly, no two people's opinions are the same. Obviously there's common things that people might have concerns about, the obvious. Then you get into obviously more climate-related items, then right through to elements of horse race, people associated with the horse racing industry. It goes on and on and on. So at that stage, you're really tailoring to what that client wants, and you also have to explain to them probably the limitations. Sometimes people come in and tell us they want this, and then we sort of hit them with 40 questions of, is this a concern? Is that a concern? Is this not? And it sort of can sometimes require them to go away and reassess it and think about it before coming back to us. But look, I think it's inevitably an increasingly mainstream in the discussion. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Carl's being paid by the question.
Sorry.
See, best on ground for the day. Yeah.
Without asking you to divulge anything that you don't want to or that we should know, in the case of high net worth clients, I'm just trying to determine if I can get an idea of where you make the cutoff point as to who gets what kind of service. You're talking about one being a dedicated professional and the second one intermediary and then the advisor.
Yeah.
Where is it in the spectrum of
Fees?
Maybe in terms of how much they pay, who gets what?
Yeah, it probably is a fee-based. It is probably a fee-based question more than anything else, and it's in approximately somewhere around probably that 18 to 20,000 a year retainer type level, where the levels of fee is starting to justify additional people on the client account. Now remember, the fee's not just a function of how many people are working on it. It'll also be a function of how many meetings they want, how much they want in their reporting, and other things they might want. So there might be some people that pay more than that, and this is not something that they value. And there might be some people where they really want that and are paying slightly less. But that's probably a fair mark where that should become the default arrangement.
As a matter of interest, do you charge explicitly for the managed account? Is there a portfolio management fee?
Yeah, we've a general advice charge specifically for the managed account. Yeah.
There's a number of, while we're waiting for more questions, there's a number of fund managers in the room. What product holes do you see out there at the present time? And I'm happy to give a perspective from JANA's point of view as well, in terms of servicing the high net worth, ultra high net worth market.
Oh, look, I think any advisor would say that one of the challenges that we face is the volatility in portfolios, and you compare sales obviously to what you can achieve in the industry super fund space, and they're very large holdings of unlisted assets, and in the last 6 months you'd like to have lots of unlisted assets. Now there's a whole debate and question mark around what's the valuations on those, are they valued at the right cap rates, is there a day of reckoning coming there? And I'm not trying to dismiss any of those real questions, but I think if there was, for advisor perspective, and particularly a way of dampening the volatility in portfolios by putting together a mix of less market beta exposed assets, while still generating good CPI plus returns, then that's what I think the product industry is still grappling with. And in Australia, I'll talk about this quite openly and honestly. Once a year, we get the joy of going to renew our PI insurance. And the number one question they'll want to ask is, what's your exposure to unlisted property funds? And I'm like, well, this is our exposure, and these are quality assets, and they've got low gearing. But the insurers are still saying, well, GFC, they all blew up. It's going to happen again. Therefore, this is going to affect your PI. And I was like, there's a real disconnect here between what's happening in the industry and probably what's the right client outcome. So I think there's a lot of work to be done in that space to give advisors more choice.
Yeah, and I'd certainly concur from our point of view. We're dealing obviously with very large industry funds that have a very large illiquidity bucket, can go direct, get great access to deal flow. But when you talk about what we say the mezzanine market, the wholesale market, which might be not-for-profits, family offices, high net worth, wholesale type clients, looking for those key diversifiers within portfolios, it starts to get thin pickings, and there is, I think, an opportunity for more product in that space. Obviously, the quality of product is going to be really essential. We do see a lot of absolute return type strategies where there's a lot of fund manager discretion associated with them, and they've struggled at times to frankly deliver. But we are, always on the lookout for key diversifiers.
Clients want stuff they understand.
Yeah.
So if you've got something that's got too much derivatives and other things in it, and you can't succinctly explain it to a client, well, even if they might take your recommendation on it, the minute it goes wrong, they're going to immediately be saying, I didn't understand this. Yeah. And I'm not saying that they're going to sue you, but I'm saying they're going to say, this is dissatisfactory to me. I don't want it anymore. So, the advantage of some of those real asset type products, I understand what it is. I understand how its income is generated. That's of appeal.
And the problem, of course, dealing from a managed account perspective, is that you've got to deal with the liquidity issue as well. How do you get that beta diversification without giving up too much liquidity, because your average managed account probably can't deal with assets that are much more than about monthly liquidity. Anything beyond that, it becomes almost impossible to manage within a managed account structure. So, combining those two elements, the requirement for beta diversification alongside not sacrificing excessive liquidity in the process, is really a holy grail.
Yeah, no doubt. Rick, a question there, I think.
G'day, Vincent. We've had probably a run of 2 or 3 high net worth clients that have come to our business over the last couple of years that have caused us to question whether we should try and build that segment into our business. The infrastructure, like you said, I guess the process around how we look after them and the sorts of investments that they want are generally different to our $1 million clients.
Yeah.
And so we made the decision not to go after that, so we're happy to refer some clients to if you want.
We can talk later, yeah.
The decision for us was based around complexity and profitability. We just sort of figured if we were going to go into it, we're going to have to properly go into it. And the second thought, which we really didn't know the answer to, but we suspected, was that we weren't really going to be as profitable per for the effort. Just curious to know what your comment is on that.
Yeah, no, it's a good point, and I think, again, when I think as you grow the business and you evolve it and you evolve the clients that you go after, you go through these stages where we've definitely gone through stages where to go to that, to say, okay, well, let's do more of that type of client in our business. What does that mean in terms of the investment infrastructure we need in the business? What does that mean in terms of the client support infrastructure we need in the business? And we've probably done, I could openly say, in the last 2 years within our business, another level up of investment across a variety of different channels to help us lean into what we hope will then be clients that we can win over the next 5 years to justify it. So you have to decide whether, I guess, that's one you want to pursue, knowing that there's probably a hit to the bottom line before you get there, and whether that's, or whether you just, stick to the core of the clients you like working with, and more organically grow from there. You can also do it more incrementally, and to be honest, we've probably done it largely incrementally over the years. It's not like we totally changed our business one night. It was probably more that we had a bit of an exposure across both and realized these clients were valuing what we did more, so we just gradually dialed more and invested more in that space.
But you would have a team that's quite separate, but just high net worth?
No, not necessarily, but we would have dedicated, I think you could say there's advisors that are operating more in that space, and their support team, therefore, is more in that space, and we are trying to make sure when we hire that people are suitable to operate in that space. So it probably now has taken over most of the business, I suppose. Yeah.
And lastly, the comment around profitability. Have you seen any outcome of that in terms of profitability versus your standard $1, $2, $3 million clients?
At the bottom line in the business, I would say the gains that we've made in terms of everyone sees those types of clients as dramatically more profitable, but we're having to build the infrastructure on the other side. So I don't see it as an easy win for bottom line, no. Yeah.
Well, the time clock is flashing at me, which either means we're out of time or it's about to blow up. But please join me in thanking Vincent O'Neill for today.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Michael. Well done, gentlemen. Thank you.